Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Reading in Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 6, Chapter 2, text 29 to 32. I think the text on the board is 32, right? So I'll read up till 32 and then we can chant together that verse. So text 29. Soham vyaktam patishyami narake vrishadarune dharmagna kamino yatra vindanti yamayatanaha. Translation of text 29. It is now clear that as a consequence of such activities, a sinful person like me must be thrown into hellish conditions meant for those who have broken religious principles and must there suffer extreme miseries. This is, of course, Ajamil speaking, after he was rescued by the Vishnu Dutas and after he expressed tremendous regret for his sinful activities. The last thing we heard was he abandoned his elderly mother and father who had no friend or other children to look after them, and he just abandoned them to live with a prostitute. So he was deeply regretting his sinful activities and very, very grateful to be rescued by the Vishnu Dutas from the Yama Dutas. Text 30. Kimidam svapna ahosvit shakshadrishtam ihadbhutam kvayata adyate yemam vyakarshan pashapanayaham. Translation. Was this a dream I saw, or was it reality? I saw fearsome men with ropes in their hands coming to arrest me and drag me away. Where have they gone? Text 31. Atate kvagata sidash chatfarash charu darshanaham vyamochayan niyamanam badva pashair adho bhuvaham. Oh, really? Oh, they should have put 32.
It says 29 through 31. Verses.
Oh, well, I was told that to prepare up to 32. That's when someone told me personally, because 32 has a purport that's substantial. I mean, every word of Prabhupada is substantial, but the purport is extremely short and is difficult to... Anyway, I would have done it if that's what I was told. All right, so if 31 is on the board, we can do that. Atam te kvam katam sidash chatfarash charudarshanaham vyamochayan niyamanam badva pashair ado bhuvaham Atate kvagata sidash chatfarash charudarshanaham vyamochayan niyamanam badva pashairado bhuvaham Atate kvagata sidash chatfarash charudarshanaham Vyamochayan niyamanam Badva pashairado bhuvaham. Others?
Tate kvagata siddhas chatfarash charudarshanah Vyamochayan
Niyamanam Tate kvagata siddhas Mataji's. Ata, thereafter, te, those persons, fa, where, gata, went, siddha, liberated, Shattvara, four personalities, Charudarshana, extremely beautiful to see, Yamochayan, they released, Niyamanam, me who was being carried away, Badva, being arrested, Pashai, by ropes, Adabhuvaha, downward to the hellish region. Translation and short purport by Srila Prabhupada. Translation, and where have those four liberated and very beautiful persons gone who released me from arrest and saved me from being dragged down to the hellish regions? Purport, as we have learned from the descriptions in the 5th canto, the hellish planets are situated in the lower portions of this universe. Therefore, they are called Ado Bhuvaha. Ajamil could understand that the Yamadutas had come from that region. Before we begin, is Dharmatma here, the devotee who assigns the classes. Come here for a second. I got to talk to you. You have a little Istagosti here. I thought you told me up to 32. Did you tell me that? All right. So can I do 32? It won't disturb the sequence? Okay.
Because tomorrow's speaker will take 33.
Okay. All right, good. I just wanted to make sure I wouldn't disturb the future sequence of the classes. It's okay. Everything's okay. We'll discuss. Now I'll read ahead. Text 32. Actually, what we can do is I'll make some comments on what we got up to here, and then for the rest of the time, we'll discuss the next verse, which has a longer purport. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshumilitam Yena Tasman Shri Gurave Namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. All right. The next text gets into this very foundational topic of association with devotees, satsang. So that we'll be discussing. But there are some points that come up in these texts that lead up to it. Text 30, this text dealing with Ajamil's feeling that he was not sure. Was it a dream I saw, or was it reality? I saw fearsome men with ropes in their hands coming to arrest me and drag me away. Where have they gone? We ex-hippies, we can relate to this kind of confusion. We are under the influence of this LSD. Srila Prabhupada had to deal with so many of us who were under the influence of this very hallucinogenic drug. And sometimes we didn't know if we were dreaming or awake. And we weren't that different from Ajamil in other ways as well. So the point that we could pick up here is that it raises the question, we don't have time to get into it too deeply, but it's a very fascinating, essential question. Is the material world is it real or is it not real? Is the material world, is it real or is it not real? Now, that's a question. Because here, for instance, in Bhagavatam, in 4th canto, 29.2b, it's additional text that Srila Prabhupada decided to include. It's an optional text. Everything happening within time, which consists of past, present, and future, is merely a dream. That is the secret understanding of all Vedic literature. So that would be like the daydream. So we have the night dream and the daydream. So it's not only Ajamil that is justified in asking this question in his near-death experience. Is it a dream or was it not a dream? In one sense, there's a famous book in Spanish, La vida es sueño, that life is a dream. So it's very dreamlike. Now, in the purport to that verse I just read the translation of, so Prabhupada writes, factually, all of material existence is only a dream. There is no question of past, present, or future. Persons who are addicted to karma kanda vichara, which means working for future happiness through fruitive activities, are also dreaming. Similarly, past happiness and present happiness are merely dreams. The actual reality is Krishna and service to Krishna, which can save us from the clutches of Maya, etc. So the point here is that that's evidence that it's not so real. Now, Prabhupada, so those of you who study carefully Srila Prabhupada's books, you'll notice in some places Prabhupada says, it's real, but it's temporary. So it may be settled because we follow in the line of, in that aspect, we follow the line of Madhvacharya, that the material world is real. He emphasizes that point very much in his Sampradaya. But actually, we have statements that Srila Prabhupada, where he said, he was in the philosophical discussions with Shamashundara discussing this famous philosopher Hegel, who thought that everything is just real. And that's kind of the common sense point of view, although Hegel was far beyond just an ordinary common thinker. But at the same time, he thought like that. And Prabhupada said, then he has not the idea of what is real. What do you mean by real? And Shamashundara said, well, according to Hegel, this is real fact. This table is real. In fact, it's spirit. Prabhupada said, no, this is imitation of real table. It is fact to a person who has no knowledge of the real, because it will not exist. Our reality means which will exist, otherwise it is not reality. Now you know in Bhagavad Gita that Nashato Vidyate Bhavo, Nabhavo Vidyate Sataha, that gives a very, very rigorous definition of what is real. What does it mean for something to exist or not? It's very simple and very deep and resolves this whole question that in Western philosophy they wrote volumes and volumes trying to understand how can we define substance as opposed to shadow. How can we define what really exists? Well, there it is. What exists cannot ever end. Real existence means it's eternal. Now, what about what Prabhupada said? It's real, but it's temporary. Is that an oxymoron? Well, Prabhupada here says, Shamashundara says, well, this may be real for some time, and then Prabhupada, it is temporary, it is not real. It is some temporary manifestation. The same example like dreaming. Dreaming is not real, but temporary hallucination, that's all. You cannot say this dream real. This word is used, svapna drashtu ivandasha, just like a dream. It is a very nice example. In dream, everything appears to be real, but it is not real. It is all false or temporary. So Prabhupada will sometimes even use the word false. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't also an aspect where we say the world is real. Prabhupada would say, how could it be unreal? It's coming from the absolute truth. How could something coming from Krishna not be real? Well, the world as we know it even goes so far as to say false. In other words, the temporary configurations of material energy, and we put a name on it, just like that verse in the second canto, Kavir Namashu Yavadatas Yadatmarvatovya Saya Buddhi Sidenya Tartena Yateta Tatra Samikshamanam Parishramam Tatra Samikshamanam. That one should be very simple in life. One should not over endeavor in the world of names. Namashu, the world of names. In other words, you have a temporary configuration and you put a name on it. Coca-Cola, United States of America, whatever, name of some country or whatever it may be. And then that reifies it. In other words, it takes something which is just some abstraction and it makes it seem real. So in the world of names, we shouldn't over-endeavor to acquire or control such dreamlike entities. So real, yes, real because the world is a dream, but it's the dream of Mahavishnu. So it's not ordinary dream. But we're all in our own dream worlds in that sense, in this material world, except those who are becoming advanced in spiritual life. I just want to suggest, my proposal is, in this regard, there's a lot more that can be said on that subject, but just to conclude this point relating to this dream verse, number 30, is that we can go both ways. We can preach to the karmis. They need to hear the unreality of the world, and we have every basis, philosophical and shastric basis, and Prabhupada Shiksha basis of, we don't have to say the world is unreal absolutely, because the demons say that, asatyama pratistam teja, but we could emphasize this aspect and explain it philosophically, how all the things that they're so obsessed with, they're actually unreal. After all, they will end at some time. Prabhupada would sometimes say, temporary, it's real but temporary, but we're also hearing that if it is temporary, according to the rigorous definition of 216 in Bhagavad Gita, then it's not, can't be called really existing or actual real in the ultimate sense. So the karmis, they need to hear that all their endeavors for fruitive activities, these are just, as it said in that verse, parishramam, a useless waste of time. Now for the jnanis, the impersonalists, they're the ones that we have to preach the other way. They need, and we're not contradicting ourselves if you analyze deeply, they need to hear how the world is not unreal. It's not just jagat mitya, that it's just all false and has no basis. A virtual reality or a hallucination or a mirage, in one sense it's unreal, but in another sense it's quite real. What we see in the mirage is not real, but we can't say there's no such thing as a mirage. You see? Virtual reality, within that, it's all really just programmed. It's just computer data, computer code, that's all. But you can't say there's no such thing as virtual reality. It's just that within that, what we're experiencing is false and unreal. A dream, a mirage, virtual reality, hallucination. They have both aspects. Anyway, the class isn't over yet. Jai, Shishi Gorni Tai ki Jai, Shishi Radha Shamar Sundara ki Jai, Shishi Krishna Balaram ki Jai, Shinga Bhagavan ki Jai. Okay, let's move along to text 31. Just something to clarify, I think most of you know, where it says that Prabhupada is describing in the purport, Ado Bhuva, that these are the lower planets. This is a little cosmology here. So what Ajamil was saved from by the Vishnu Dutas was not exactly these planets, but rather the subtle abodes. When we hear about, in 5th canto, that very frightening description of how you get tortured by the Yamadutas, that's a subtle realm. Prabhupada confirms that in class, and also in Back to Godhead magazine, someone asked about that. I'll just read this very brief. It is this subtle body that undergoes punishment in the hellish planets. While it is true, as the Gita says, that the soul goes on to another body, it is also true, as the Bhagavatam says, that the sinful soul, first of all, undergoes punishment in hellish planets. Because the suffering takes place on a subtle plane, the time duration seems very long. and when in fact it is brief. This was an answer to a letter in the year 2000, Back to Godhead magazine. But in other places it's confirmed. You can read in the 5th canto. Now the whole realm, what's described here, refers to the subterranean heavenly planets. That's what's there. This is, while they're hellish, they're actually subterranean heavenly planets. They're collectively called Pataloka, and specifically named Atala, Vitala, Sutala, Talatala, Mahatala, Rasatala, and Patala itself. But the regions from which Ajamil was rescued by the Vishnu Dutas were specifically the places where the Yamadutas torture the subtle bodies of sinful people according to the types of sins committed in their previous gross bodies. And we shouldn't think, it's just subtle. I don't have to worry. I mean, maybe you don't have to worry, but people don't have to worry about being punished for their sin because it's just subtle. No, when we have a dream, we don't suffer in the dream. And not only that, because it's subtle, throw you off the cliff and you get smashed, but then you don't die because it's subtle. So in one sense, it'd be easier if it were gross, because the way the descriptions of the Yamadutas is so severe, how they're torturing, and that it's incredible. You all have read that. And you think, well, it'll all be over very quickly. You get crushed in the stones and then it'll be finished, right? No, because it's subtle. You get crushed and then you have to go get crushed again or go to some other. It's not very nice. So Ajamil was obviously quite grateful to the Vishnu Dutas. And that brings us to the main point of satsang. Ajamil had a wonderful satsang. He had good satsang by his father and his family earlier. Now he's getting the next level of satsang, the Vishnu Dutas, the personal associates of Lord Vishnu. He had there, and he heard from them also. So text 32, I'll just read myself. Atapi me durbhagasyam vibudotama darshane vavitavyam mangalena yenatma me prasidati. I am certainly most abominable and unfortunate to have merged in an ocean of sinful activities, but nevertheless, because of my previous spiritual activities, I could see those 4 exalted personalities who came to rescue me. Now I feel exceedingly happy because of their visit. Prabhupada's purport, as stated in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Madhya 2254, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastrikaya, Lavamatra Sadhu Sanghe, Sarva Siddhihaya. Association with devotees is recommended by all the Shastras, because by even a moment of such association, one can receive the seed for all perfection. In the beginning of his life, Ajamil was certainly very pure, and he associated with devotees and brahmanas. Because of that pious activity, even though he was fallen, he was inspired to name his son Narayan. Certainly this was due to good counsel given from within by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. As the Lord says in Bhagavad Gita 15:15, Sarvasya chaham niti sanivishto matak smriti jnanam apohanam cha. I am seated in everyone's heart, and from me come remembrance, knowledge, and forgetfulness. The Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart, is so kind that if one has ever rendered service to him, the Lord never forgets him. Thus the Lord from within gave Ajamil, the opportunity to name his youngest son Narayan, so that in affection he would constantly call, Narayana, Narayan, and thus be saved from the most fearful and dangerous condition at the time of his death. Such is the mercy of Krishna. Guru Krishna prasade bhai bhakti lata bija. By the mercy of the Guru and Krishna, one receives the seed of bhakti. This association saves a devotee from the greatest fear. In our Krishna consciousness movement, we therefore change a devotee's name to a form that reminds him of Vishnu. If at the time of death the devotee can remember his own name. Maybe I'm too nervous and frightened and confused and I can't remember Krishna, but at least maybe I remember my own name, right? What mercy. So even if he remembers his own name, such as Krishna Das or Govinda Das, he can be saved from the greatest danger. Therefore, the change of names at the time of initiation is essential. The Krishna consciousness movement is so meticulous that it gives one a good opportunity to remember Krishna somehow or other. Let me read that last sentence again. You can have a whole seminar on that one sentence. The Krishna conscious movement is so meticulous, so precise, so finely tuned for the need of the living entity, the conditioned souls in this world, and even for the spiritual needs of the liberated souls. It is so meticulous that it gives one a good opportunity to remember Krishna somehow or other. So the main thing here is the satsang. The whole Krishna conscious movement is for that purpose. So we can have good association and we can have a shelter we have to have some association, right? So we can have a shelter from bad association. Yes, Prahlad Maharaj, he describes that many sadhus, they go to the Himalayas, Vijane, where there's no people, and they avoid bad association. But we can't imitate that. So we have the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, so we could find good association. We have to not only find it to take it, but we also have to qualify ourselves so we can also give it as well. Otherwise, if everybody depends only, of course we're supposed to be very humble, so you say, well, I'm nothing, but if we all only want to take the good association, we also have to be qualified, at least up to a certain standard, that our association will not be in any way negative, in any way harmful to the spiritual life. We have to be very honest, just for starters. So in the text, there's this word, durbhagasya, so unfortunate. Jamil is thinking of himself like that. Durbhagasya. So what a contrast with the residents of Vrindavan. In the 10th canto, 14th chapter, 32nd verse, Aho bhagyam nanda gopa vrachokasham yan mitram paramanantam purnam brahma sanatanam. How greatly fortunate are Nanda Maharaj, the cowherd men, and all the other inhabitants of Rajabhumi. There is no limit to their good fortune, because the absolute truth, the source of transcendental bliss, the eternal supreme Brahman, has become their friend. So that's satsang. In that case, they got not only satsang, but param satyam sangha. They got the absolute truth. Purnam Brahma Sanatanam. What better satsang could you get than Krishna directly? Now, Ajamil also became most fortunate due to satsang, or sadhu sangha. In his case, the messengers of Lord Vishnu provided such wonderfully auspicious association, which picked up where his previous good family association left off, was interrupted. In today's purport, Srila Prabhupada quotes the Chaitanya Charitamrita, 22nd chapter, Madhya Lila, text 54, and also chapter 19, Madhya Lila, text 151. He also cites Bhagavad Gita 15:15. You all know that. All these verses relate to satsang, sadhu sangha, that indispensable factor for spiritual advancement. Why is such association so vitally important? Why is satsang so vitally important? I know you all can probably contribute with many good, wonderful answers, but because of a time constraint, allow me to answer for you. First, from the epistemic perspective, what does that mean? The study of knowledge and how to acquire it. How do we know it's not just some belief, but it's actual knowledge? This is epistemology. So from that perspective, we require such association, such satsang, in order to become enlightened, especially regarding that which is beyond the range of our sense and our fertile brain. In other words, one of the reasons satsang is so indispensable is that just relying on my mental speculation and my sense perception, I can't ever access the transcendence. In Bhagavad Gita, the self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. How else may we obtain knowledge of transcendental reality, actual reality? We were talking about the difference between reality and illusion. So we're kind of stuck within the world of illusion so long as we don't accept Shabda Brahma, which comes through Sri Guru Parampara. If we go like the way of the Western philosophers who don't accept that, then we're condemning ourselves. We're forfeiting our opportunity to learn what is real, to learn about that which is eternal. Otherwise, all these contemporary and traditional Western philosophers, they're just groping in the dark. They're very thoughtful. They sense there must be something eternal. They even talk about the self as part of eternity, but stuck within time. And then they reach a dead end. They can't understand, they can't become realized as to the self. Of course, there are exceptions like Socrates. Prabhupada said he was a great jnani. But it's doubtful that he was able to go very far beyond Aham Brahmasmi. Prabhupada praised Socrates. He says, yes, it is very good. He stuck to his principle. He even gave up his body completely calmly. So he was self-realized, but in a very general sense. But that's the exception. Since Socrates' philosophy didn't exactly become more elevated in the Western world. So how else can we attain this knowledge? By material sense perception? By mental speculation? The famous empiricist philosopher, by the way, please forgive me that I'm reading a little bit, but I'm reading, this is my style, is I'm spontaneous, but then I spontaneously put it down on paper. So I know reading you don't like so much, but what can I do? How else can we obtain knowledge of by mental speculation? The famous empiricist philosopher John Locke thus decided that there is no way of realizing or even knowing the exact nature of what is really out there, the things in themselves. And he falsely concluded that we are also inherently blocked from even knowing what is really in here, namely the conscious perceiving soul or self. So these two mysterious entities, what's really objectively out there, not just what I'm perceiving, because my senses are obviously imperfect, but what's really out there, the things in themselves. And then who's doing the perceiving? Who am I? What is the soul inside? Sanatan Goswami, Kayami, Kaneyamara, what is it? Tatataya, Nahi Jani, Hitahaya. There can't be any hita, there can't be any welfare for me if I don't know who I am and why I'm forced to suffer the threefold miseries. Coming to Lord Chaitanya with that humble plea. So we need to know that, but we can't know that if we're limited just to Pratyaksha and Anuman. So therefore people become existentialists or Buddhists, or they become nihilists. People usually take the temporary configurations as true, objective entities, and similarly confuse false ego with real personality. In other words, you don't have access to actual reality. We have to conjure up reality within the world of illusion. That's the best we can do, is just make up some so-called reality, make up some so-called personality, false ego, ahankara. Locke's terribly pessimistic and agnostic conclusion stem from his ignorance regarding a third source of knowledge, that conclusive and comprehensive evidence we know as Shabda Brahma, hearing from authority, from self-realized souls, gurus, representing a bona fide disciplic succession, sadhu, handing down essential Vedic knowledge, shastra, guru, sadhu, shastra. Even up to the present day, Western thinkers, some of them rather brilliant in their own way, nonetheless are stymied trying to get a handle of the identity or nature of the self and God and time and the origin of the universe, etc. So first of all, we require satsang for the purpose of learning who is who, learning what is what. I mean to say, learning what is what, who is who, and what are the interrelationships. What is that called? Sambandha. They will then instruct us in the process of realizing this knowledge, how to function practically in the light of such knowledge. And finally, they will lead us to the ultimate goal of such knowledge and human life. Now, Prabhupada quoted that verse from Chaitanya Charitamrita, even a moment's lava matra, even 1/11 of a second, more or less, like that. Just a very brief moment. In Bhagavatam also, in the second canto, Kim Pramatasya Bahubi, Parokshayr Hayanai Iha, Param Muhurtam Viditam, Gatate Shreyase Yataha. That what is the value of a long life of many years in this world, and still one remains inexperienced, naive, without knowledge? Better varam muhurtam viditam, better one moment of full realization. Why is that? Because gatate shreyaseyata, because it gives one a start. It launches one to one's ultimate self-interest. Shreya. So we have many examples of Ajamil is example. He was with the the Vishnu Dutas a short time. He got so much benefit. And we have, in our own experience, we have so much example. We ourselves are often examples. How maybe at the beginning we didn't come and join the Hare Krishna movement, but we had some brief association. So many devotees tell, book distributor approaching them, something like that. I know in the case of my poor father, he went to speak with Srila Prabhupada. And he was not interested in religion or spiritual life, philosophy. Why did he go to speak with Srila Prabhupada? And where did he go? He went, at that time it was a terrible neighborhood. The Lower East Side in Manhattan. All, besides the hippies, it was just a very low income place. That's why the hippies moved there, because they can afford the rent. I also moved there. So he went to speak to Prabhupada, not for spiritual guidance, just to ask Prabhupada's opinion what to do about my son. He has gone crazy on this LSD. He always talks about you, so what do you say? What is your idea? He already tried the psychiatrist, that didn't work at all. So Srila Prabhupada told my father, he said, there is something wrong with that boy, but we could fix him up. And my father told me the exact words. And sometimes my father was quite offensive and even blasphemous and over the years, but then as he's getting older and older, he started becoming softer. Oh, you guys, okay. Haribo, welcome, Hare Krishna. Great souls, they taking birth as pigeons now. They made some mistake. Let's not do that. Hare Krishna. So, and we got older. I was able to make him chant Hare Krishna sometimes, and he became very proud. When I'd introduce him to my godbrothers, he said, I was the first one who spoke with the old man, Bhaktivedanta. Before any of you, I spoke to him, because it was 1966. He was like, not exactly a senior godbrother, but he was, one of the original got association, very short. And I said, my father, you're not into so much this Hare Krishna, or how come you're so happy that you spoke with Prabhupada? What do you mean? Bhaktivedanta is a great man. He started the whole Hare Krishna all over the world, and I spoke to him. Now, that may not seem exactly like pure devotional service, but I mean, if I won't even get into it, but how my father was so unfavorable, we can say, earlier. But as he got older, that's all by his association, that lava matra, that brief interview that he had with Srila Prabhupada. Many other examples are there. So again, the mood and mission of Srila Prabhupada, he established this whole amazing society just to afford us such association and to bestow it upon this world's misdirected civilization, like that verse in Bhagavatam. Tula yama lavina pi nasvarga na punar bhavam bhagavat sangi sangyasya kim ashisha, what is it? Martyanam kim sashisha. So that's another one of those lava matra verses. Lavena pi, even very brief, there's nothing, tula yama, nothing could compare to association with sadhu. It's better than going to heaven. What to speak of subterranean heavenly planet. It's better than even liberation. It's the best. What to speak of karma? What to speak of comparing it with fruitive activity, which is for those who are meant for death. Martyrdom, kim shashisha. That's in Bhagavatam. Hare Krishna. 1.18.13. So in these verses, we don't have time to get into discussion, it's just a question to think about. Which is prior? Is it satsang or agyata sukriti? All right, there is an answer to that. Guru Krishna Prasadi Bhai Bhakti Lata Bija. Prabhupada quotes that in today's purport. Now, in a conversation, the devotees asked, what is that bhagyavan? What does that mean? The Prabhupada said, wealthy. You know, someone's wealthy, they have a lot of money, they're rich, they're wealthy. No, not bhagavan, possessing wealth, but bhagyavan. Devotees were a little confused. And then they said, I thought it meant good fortune. And then Prabhupada, he had it all planned, he was telling him, I have shed gallons of blood to make your good fortune. In other words, we should never think that I did some, and even if we did do some service in our past life, how did we do it? By the mercy of the preacher, the Madhyamadikar. The mercy of Krishna comes through the Madhyamadikar, the preacher. Then by that mercy, then Krishna's mercy comes. That's how the whole thing begins. Then you got some agyata sukriti. Yes, Prabhupada gave me a big plate of prasadam. He said, you could be the one to distribute prasadam to the devotees. So I pick up the plate, I take it out to the landing, and I'm afraid to walk down the stairs because I was still tripping, as we say. And I didn't know what to do. So then a devotee came, he grabbed the plate. But just by taking the plate from Prabhupada and taking it out of his apartment to the top of the stairs, I know I got some benefit. And then over the years, then you start becoming a little more sane and you start doing better service, better than that. So that's how it jump-starts a process of ultimate salvation. So we're very little time left. I had a lot more to share because yesterday, you have that class by Srila Prabhupada on Ekadasi. And the whole class, it was from first canto, 10th chapter, what verse, 11 something? And the whole class was all about satsang. So many points came out from that class, those of you who heard it. If I could quickly mention something. he quoted also more verses about satam prasagam mama virya samvido. What is it? Bhavanti ritkarna rasayana kata sajjoshiyat ashvapavarga vartmani shraddha ratir bhaktir anukramishati. All that wonderful process, faith and attachment and love and bhakti all arise from satam prasagam mamavir, by hearing the powerful sound vibrations or by hearing the glorious heroic activities of the Lord from these satam, that means devotees, sadhus, satam. And also the, let's see, he even in the class yesterday, he even said that the virya is like potent and it makes the disciples pregnant. It means, doesn't matter, male or female, doesn't matter. We all get pregnant from this idea. Of course, it's a figurative sense of becoming pregnant. Not so much that our abdomens expand, but our devotional creeper expands. And the fruit of this pregnancy is this process of shraddha, ratir, bhakti, anukramishati. One after another, this elevation takes place. So just as Ajamil is becoming liberated, we're also being so rescued by the mercy of the pure devotees, and especially by the mercy of one especially empowered Vaishnava, our founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada. Who also stated that satsang, in the class yesterday, said satsang is so powerful. We can't help but acknowledge that he has and is still providing the central powerhouse for this liberating association. In other words, if we all, and we have some very great souls in this movement. I don't want to make any offense. It's not like everybody's like me, just an ex-hippie or still hippie, I don't know. But if we just only depend, without Prabhupada, how would it all be coming together? Of course, this temple wouldn't be here, but how would we, if we just only depended on each other without also having Prabhupada as the central point of our association? Therefore, I agree with Subhag Swami, who said about 5 years ago, right here in this temple room, never leave ISKCON, never leave ISKCON, never leave ISKCON. Hare Krishna. Because we have to struggle to keep improving and correcting whatever needs to be corrected in the society according to our position. So the intelligent person takes advantage of this satsang. Now what about the change of names? Well, we don't have time to discuss, but that's so we could remember Krishna better. Our own name is connected. But then you see the mood and mission of Srila Prabhupada is a very Western idea, because in India so many of you already have names that are Narayan or something, related to Krishna, a great devotee of Krishna, isn't it? So does your name get changed too? Sometimes it doesn't so much. But at the same time, sometimes you get a little sentimental and you identify the name more with family than with what the name signifies. So it doesn't hurt to get your name changed, if you don't mind. But in the West, we had all these crazy names, and now we have names. My name was Prabhupada Das. Now Damodara Swami. These are serious names, as we say. So anyway, we read 4 verses and we made a few comments, and we're getting very close to time. So does anyone have any correction, comment? Deven Januja Prabhu, Hare Krishna. You want the mic? Or does? Okay.
Here, Ajami lihat dan sadhu sangha. Yet, he was unprepared for what he saw. So you can see as though a longer time somebody has to have something else to not fall down.
Yeah, everyone understood the question that it may seem like satsang is not sufficient because Ajamil had the satsang from his family, and even still he became victimized. But it was sufficient because the Vishnu Dutas wouldn't have come if he didn't chant Narayan at the time of leaving the body, or almost leaving the body. And he wouldn't have chanted Narayan, is what we're hearing, is that naming his child, he wouldn't have chanted Narayan if his son's name was not Narayan. And his son's name wouldn't be Narayan if it wasn't for the impression of the previous Sukriti, the previous devotional credit that he had to name his son name of Vishnu, Narayan. So for temporarily, even we see in our own society, in Prabhupada's ISKCON society, sometimes there are some setbacks, isn't it? So many examples, too many examples. Even in our own lives, we're going sometimes too slow, or sometimes we go backwards. But the good association centered around Prabhupada and Prabhupada's Shiksha and following Prabhupada's instructions. And Prabhupada's bringing the whole Guru Parampara. We have such a wealth. It's like Niagara Falls, a big, super big waterfall of mercy we're being inundated by that. But Maya is very strong. So it doesn't mean that we get satsang. So many devotees had personal association with Prabhupada and then had some problem, something like that. It's a struggle. It's like a razor's edge. So you have to be very serious. And how could we be serious? By avoiding bad association and by helping one another to remain focused on the goal. And if you see me showing some bad sign, talking too much prajalpa, or becoming irregular in sadhana, tell me about it, correct me. And if I see you, don't become angry at me if I point it out to you. In other words, that's how we take advantage of good association. The other day, Kadamba Kanana Maharaj was giving class, and he was pointing out how the mind can rationalize or try to justify going into some sinful activity or something like that. He gave a very vivid and realistic presentation of how that can work, so to save ourselves from that. Sadhusanga, we can say also, in text 19, if you go back, instead of giving the credit to satsang, Prabhupada gives the credit to the holy name. But how would we get Nam if it wasn't from satsang? I heard Hare Krishna Mahamantra before Prabhupada chanted in my presence. I heard from Allen Ginsberg, the poet. He was chanting, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. A funny kind of way of chanting. But he was more or less chanting Hare Krishna. He was somehow attracted to the chanting Hare Krishna. But did it change me? Did it affect me? Did Allen Ginsberg sow the seed? No. It's when I heard the Maha Mantra from Srila Prabhupada, then my life started to change like that. So you can say Harinam is also necessary. But where do we get Harinam? Through association, isn't it?
You also hear that Krishna is Go Brahmana Hitaya.
Krishna is what?
Go Brahmana Hitaya.
Yes.
He's the protector of the grounds. So Brahmana can curse. So what does that mean? Is it something physical? That protection from Krishna?
Well, physical generally refers to something mundane physical. There's no physical. We don't. That usually refers to Maya. Through the devotees, again, that conundrum that we're eternal spirit souls and we're living within time and these temporal bodily mechanisms, yantras. So, in one sense, we need something, you might say, physical. So that's why the devotee, that's why a great devotee, Nitya Siddha, a devotee like Srila Prabhupada, he took the trouble to come and accept also a body that's within time. Not exactly a material body, but still a body that's showing the effect of time. Just so we could interface, so we could connect with him. He took all that trouble just so we would, and that's how Krishna is protecting Brahminical culture. There was no, especially in the West, there was no Brahminical culture to protect. But still, we need to have Brahmins. We need to have a head of society. And we need to have Vaishnavas. Allen Ginsberg, the poet, he asked Hayagriva, he said, does the Swami, does he actually think he can make these hippies into Vaishnav? Actually, he asked Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada said, yes. And not only that, I'll also make them Brahmanas. So that's how Krishna is protecting Brahminical culture, even in the Lower East Side, in the middle of all the hippies, by sending a pure devotee. Okay, it's getting late. One other question or comment? Yes, Prabhu. Microphone, please. Have enough cord? Maybe why don't you move? It's easier. Hare Krishna.
Regarding those who are not perfected in life, who are very devotees, like the Buddhas are for sinful people, and for pure devotees, for those who are in between, who are devotees who are not perfected in life, and when they live for what happens, how they are taken, how the soul is taken.
Now, could you just, who are you describing? What level of devotee?
Those who are not perfected in life,
Yes.
they are not pure devotees, but they also live the body. So, who takes them? The Buddhas or something?
Well, it's not exactly like the Christian purgatory or something like that, where you have heaven and hell, and then you have this in-between place or something like that. No, they take another material body, but the Nehabra Yosti Pratyavayonavit, the Bhagavad Gita, the famous verse, text 40 of chapter 2, explains that nothing is lost. They're born in a family, ideally of Vaishnavas. That's all described in terms of general yoga in chapter 6, and the exact description of the unsuccessful yoga, yoga chalita manasa. So then they take birth in Suchinam, Srimatam Gehe,